some dangerous, large carnivore out there.
And I saw that bird pick a young deer off the road and fly away.
And it was just about getting dark, and we started panicking, running down this ridge, not really having any clue what was throwing rocks in our vicinity, good-sized rocks. And I stopped long enough to get a 357 out of my backpack and look back, and that's when I saw it. I saw one.
For a week, the town of Defiance was being harassed by a werewolf. And it's actually attacked two railroad workers, killed livestock, just a lot of weird stuff that was going on.
Good Sunday evening, Monster X's. This is your host, Gunnar Monson. I am also the founder of the Sasquatch Coffee Company. Check it out at www.squatchcoffee.com. And if you're listening for the first time or you haven't joined us already, join us on Facebook. Check out the Monster X Facebook group. We are growing by leaps and bounds, so awesome. Today's show, we are doing a 2015 year in review for the topic of our favorite hairy friend, Sasquatch. And we will be without my usual host and sidekick partner, Shane Corson. He is not able to make it today, so best to Shane. We'll have you back next week, buddy. I know that he was out in the snow with our good friend Larry last night, so hopefully he didn't catch something. But best to you, my friend. I hope everybody had a great Christmas. I know that I did, so I have not been out squatching in a bit, but I'm looking forward to getting out there here shortly after the first of the year. So without further ado, I'm going to bring on, we have three guests that are joining us. We're going to do a roundtable and talk about the things that have gone on in this last year. With us today are Julie Rench, Trent Nielsen. Trent was on Naked and Afraid this year, and Kip Morrill. Almost everybody in the Bigfoot world knows Kip. For those of you listening that don't know Kip, check him out on Facebook. He's a great guy and very active in the Bigfoot field. So, without further ado, I'm going to bring on our co-guests, our roundtable participants. Trent, Julie, and Kip, are you there?
Yes, how are you?
I'm doing
Trent,
well.
I'm here.
Kip, are you there, Mr. Morrill?
Hey, Gunner, Kip's here. Just got on.
All right. So, how are you guys doing? Let's go around. We're going to do a little bit of roundtable. We'll go through some of the events of the year and talk about them, discuss them. But first off, for those that don't know you guys, let's start with a little bit of introduction. Kip, if you'd go first.
Sure. So, of course, my name's Kip Morrill. Been a Bigfoot enthusiast probably since I was about the age of 6 or 7, growing up in Redding, California, heard all the stories, read all the books, had the John Green books, etc. Wasn't until probably, maybe 2010 2011, the world of Facebook, I was introduced to that. And, of course, there were a lot of Facebook Bigfoot groups, and so it allowed me to kind of connect with some people and get more involved out in the field. And so the rest is history. I've helped out on some various investigations with Bart Catino's thermal footage in the Sierras. I've helped out a little bit with the Bluff Creek Project. Great project, by the way. And currently living in the Sacramento area. I'm a federal wildland firefighter. Love the outdoors. Just got back from Southern Oregon. And that's a little bit about me.
Thanks, Chip. Julie, tell us a little bit about Julie.
Hi, I am from Southwest Ohio, and I have been a Bigfoot enthusiast pretty much all of my life. I grew up hearing stories about the wild man of the Uwharrie Forest, because I'm born right there next to the Uwharrie Forest near Troy, North Carolina. I got involved with the Janoskwa Project over a year ago with Paul Hayes. I'm sure you guys are familiar with Paul. And we just recently expanded into Southwest Ohio. So now we have the Janoskwa Project Southwest Ohio. And we've been doing checking out migratory routes in Ohio that we believe are going on here. And that's pretty much where I'm centralized right now, is in Ohio.
Thank you, Julie. Mr. Trent Nielsen, how are you today?
Hey, I'm good, Gunner. Thanks. And I began as a non-believer in Bigfoot until I had my own encounter, and when I was young, and ever since then I can't get enough of it. I research it everywhere, and it's just not myself; it's an entire community. And even this past year, several sightings and encounters in my hometown where I grew up, and this last year I was recently on Discovery Channel's Naked and Afraid, a survival show, and we got to talk a little bit about Bigfoot, and that was a lot of fun because it brought a lot of questions from a lot of people that had questions. So glad to be here, Gunner.
Yep. And we had Trent was on the show not too very long ago, shared his encounter from his childhood, which was really interesting. So I think I might have lost somebody. Hold on just a sec. Nope, we're good. Everybody still there? Raise your hand if you're... So this year, for me, Bigfooting seemed to be a little bit more quiet, kind of a quiet year for Bigfooting or Bigfoot stuff in general. But as I went back and was preparing for the show, I mean, there's always something that's going on, no matter how quiet it seems the year is. I mean, we had everything from the Lettuce Lake video, which initially was kind of interesting, but is everybody familiar with the Lettuce Lake video? Kip, Julie, Trent?
Yes. Kip, I am not, actually.
In January, there was a video, and it was taken to the swamp in the Lettuce Lake Park in Florida, pretty close to Orlando. And it sounded a lot like it under pretty suspicious circumstances. But the initial viewing of it, was pretty compelling. So if you haven't had a chance, folks, to look at it, go ahead and look at it, and you can see what extent that my personal conclusion is that it looks to be like a hoax. So, but it did get the year off to an interesting start. So February we had
a lot of discussion about that.
What's that?
There was a lot of discussion about that. I believe Matt Moneymaker came out and said he believed it to be a hoax, didn't he?
I know that the BFRO, the Florida BFRO, was involved in it. And then we actually had Tim Pisano came on and talked about it. He was convinced that it was real. We actually sent him Shane suggested that he actually go contact some of the forest workers that the rangers that were working in that area, because supposedly the person had made a report immediately afterwards. And as far as I know, that's never been done. So, but yeah, it didn't. But for those that saw, I mean, it was a very interesting looking initially, and it was my initial observation was it could have been the real deal, but that's why it's important to go and investigate things more thoroughly than just going off your initial and the discussion, things like fuzzy videos and pictures that are not very clear, and this was actually pretty interesting. I mean, as far as the videos go. So February was a pretty quiet month in the world of Bigfooting for me. We actually had an interesting report taken here in Oregon, and I actually am a grocer by trade, and a couple months later I had a customer actually come in. It was something that happened pretty close to where we research, and this gentleman came in and was telling me about how he was upset with his mom because she'd seen a Bigfoot and not told him about it till much later. But the story was that this gal was headed west on this highway, and he came around a corner, and there was a semi stopped in the other lane, and a Bigfoot had its hand on the hood of the semi, and she couldn't tell if it had been hit or it had, been in the middle of the road and the truck stopped suddenly, and it looked irritated and then looked at her and walked up the hillside, was the story. And she drives by the guy, the truck driver has got his window down and says, what the hell did we just see? And so that was pretty interesting as far as reports in that time of year. So in May, Mark DeWerth held his annual Bigfoot conference there in Ohio. I think that's a combination of Ohio and Hawaii. So, but no, it was in Ohio, and I know that one of the big events at that time was they had a viewing of that there's something in the woods, which just came out on DVD. Has anybody seen that movie yet?
Yeah, I was there at the OBC in May, and I thought it was pretty good, pretty well made. It had parts to it that were sort of humorous, so it wasn't what I expected. Actually, it was better than I anticipated as far as, Bigfoot movies go. A lot of times we hear a bunch of hype about them, and then when they come out, it's kind of a letdown. But I actually liked that one, and I will be purchasing it.
And I've heard good things of the feedback that we had. One of the actors from the movie was on the show. Michael Hall was and talked about the movie and the story behind the movie. And I have not yet seen it, but I too will be purchasing it, and can't wait to see it. This was an interesting year. There was it seems to be a hot topic for making movies in the last few years. Besides Something in the Woods, I think what else we had? There was a movie released called Bigfoot Chronicles, and ironically, the gentleman who made it is from here in Oregon, and we share a last name, but we're not related. So I was talking to him back a couple of years ago when he was making it, and it was an interesting movie. Not one of my favorites, but it was another Bigfoot movie, kind of a low budget deal. Then I think there was a couple other movies. The Chronicles movie. Did anybody else see that?
Yeah, the Chronicles. I just saw that a couple weeks ago. It was interesting. a different spin on it. Yeah.
And I know that there's a movie that I have not seen yet called Valley of the Sasquatch. I'm usually pretty good about, seeing those right away. So, but have not seen that. Anybody else see that one? I'm taking that as a no.
No, I didn't see it.
So,
isn't that it's just showing in certain cities at different times, right. Isn't it so far? I don't believe
I don't think that it's white. It's not got wide release, and I don't think that it's out on DVD yet.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I know that it was down in North Carolina, and a couple of my friends down there saw it, and they thought it was really awesome.
Okay, cool. So something there's one to put on your watch list.
Hey, and Julie, what was the name of the movie you said that you were going to purchase?
Something in the Woods.
Okay, I missed that. I wanted to write it down.
And the other couple movies that came out this year, Eduardo Sanchez Exists came out on DVD. It might have been released in 2014, but I know that it came out on DVD this year. And that one actually was really well done. And sounds like somebody's on an airplane. Or Kip, are you flying a plane right now?
I just landed.
You saw Bigfoot.
That's either that or somebody's flying their drone in the background. But Exist was I thought I would give that one a 4.5 out of 5 stars. Did anybody else see Exist?
I love it.
Yeah.
My memory, because I'm thinking I did see it. Did they have a cabin in the woods out there? And
yes.
The guy on the mountain bike?
That's the one.
Okay. Yeah, I thought that was actually pretty good as well.
And for those who don't know, Eduardo Sanchez actually was involved with the Blair Witch Project. And ironically, this one was not as Blair Witchy to me as Willow Creek actually ended up being. So there was an angry Bigfoot, but there was actually a reason for it to be angry. So that one that's definitely a recommend. And the other one that I have yet to see yet, but I hear is excellent, is the Minerva Monster. Anybody on?
Yeah, that was great. That was great. Paul Hayes was actually in that and did his story about when he had his sighting. Mm-hmm. And he wasn't too far away from Minerva when he had his sighting on his property.
Cool.
So that was kind of interesting. But that's really good. I bought that one, and, it was packed in that room at the OVC. When they showed that for the first time, it was like almost standing room only. And everybody just absolutely loved it.
Cool. Anybody else? You haven't seen that one, Kip or Trent?
Yeah, I have not.
I didn't see that one either.
All right. Well, Henry posted a link to it in the room, so thank you, Henry.
Yeah, totally. I use my wife, who's a skeptic, to kind of vet whether a Bigfoot movie is good or not, and she enjoyed Exist. And funny and interesting enough, she really liked Willow Creek. So, hey, I thought that that was kind of interesting coming from a pretty big skeptic. So,
and I liked Willow Creek stuff. I just wasn't a fan of the end of the movie, how it came. But the tent scene, awesome. If you haven't seen it, I still would recommend. That was actually done by Bobcat Goldthwait of all people, who has actually been, a producer of. He hasn't. It was funny because I hadn't seen him in forever. And, he was a comedian back in the '80s and did the weird voice. And I attended 2 screenings of Willow Creek in Portland, and he talked pretty normal. He's like, "Yeah, no, this is my real voice." And I'm like, "Oh man, that's kind of weird." Felt a little disconcerting because you're used to him being that other character. So, other things that happened this year, we had the Survivor Man Bigfoot episodes. Kip, did you watch the Survivor Man Bigfoot episodes?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I thought they were actually pretty interesting. I kind of appreciated the way he approached things. He definitely he kind of tries to mask the fact that I think he is a believer, but he kind of masks it in a bit of a skeptic way, which I kind of appreciated. But yeah, because you wonder that somebody like that who's out in the woods by themselves, they're going to typically be somebody I would think that would, you're going to be super attentive to the things that are happening around you. And so for somebody like that who spends an enormous amount of time in the woods by themselves, I'm sure there should be some interesting things that happen, and I'm sure that much of it is explained away because he does spend a lot of time out there. So if he's experiencing something, then that makes him question things and whatnot, I think it's pretty interesting.
Julie, did you catch the Survivor Man episodes, Bigfoot episodes?
Yes, I did actually, and I thought they were interesting. With I was kind of surprised to see Todd standing, but I guess that made it even more interesting and probably drew a lot more people to want to watch and see what he was up to. But as far as the concept goes, it was awesome, and I really like Les. I've watched him do his survival shows for a long time. And I think if anybody is going to be able to go out there with somebody and find anything, any type of evidence, it should be Les. I mean, he's very equipped to be out in the outdoors like that.
Trent, did you catch the Survivor Man Bigfoot episodes?
Yeah, I did, and I'll tell you what I think about it. With Les, and being that I was on one of the reality shows, I understand the production, putting it on TV. You want to draw a crowd. Les, he goes out there by himself. He produces everything that he does. When I went out there, I gave him material, and they produced it how they wanted. But Les produces it how he wants. And what he's very particular about is trust, and that he actually has survival experiences. He's very alert to what people think about him and that he actually does what he says. So when he's out there talking about Bigfoot, and being that he's a survivalist and he's out there so much, you get a keen to those sounds around you. Where when I went to the jungle, they were all new sounds to me. I had no idea what was out there. But Les, he's very keen to what's going on around him. And for him to come out and say something to the public, Les is very, very aware that he wants people to only know the truth. And for him to even do an episode like that was a little bit edgy. And then when he came out with it and talked about Bigfoot, it was amazing to me, because there's something out there and he knows there is, but he's playing the fence on both sides. But I'll tell you, he wouldn't have even done the show had he not known some of his experiences were actually really real. Where, how much can we really trust TV? How much can we really trust the internet? But when Les comes out and says it, wow, he's actually one person I trust 100%.
Yeah, and he had he's had a couple of experiences. I believe it was in Alaska was one of them that he heard some very ape-like sounds when he was out by himself, and that kind of piqued his interest. I remember on one of the episodes, he was on the island. He heard what sounded like a tree being pushed over, and I know he alluded to how many times he heard that when he was out in the woods by himself, and that he didn't really have the context of Bigfoot so much at that time. But
well, and when you have someone like Les who is out there so much, and I have friends that actually live out in the woods, you learn what those sounds are. You learn patterns. You learn consistency, and these things that he was hearing were not like what he had usually been accustomed to hearing, and that's what first alerted him, and that's why he did the series. Is he had a few experiences, and he's like, hey, there's something going on. Let's go check it out. So, I mean, just keep that in mind. He knows the sounds out there, and when you hear something different, when you're used to something, it throws up the red flags.
It was interesting, and I like the fact that his reputation brings positive attention to a Bigfoot field that isn't always treated seriously.
Right.
And treated nut job, which is nice because he does have a little bit of credibility. He's not just somebody every day that. So it's nice that he does have some positive credibility towards Bigfooting.
Yeah, and Les is a great guy, and he's not, like I said, if I'm going to trust somebody out there, I would trust Les. He's not going to let you think there's something that isn't out there. He's the type of person that if he sees and does it, he wants to share it with everybody.
Yeah, it was interesting. I mean, at the end of 2014, one of the big conversations was that at the Sasquatch Summit in Washington, Les was there along with Dr. Meldrum and Dr. Bindernagel and Todd Standing, and it was interesting because being there, Standing's presentation was very much like a sales pitch, and at that time he was trying to had put out there. I think he was trying to raise $900,000, and I don't know if that was his failure to do so, and the lack of warm reception, I think, at the summit may have been contributed to his going silent. So there haven't been any more Muppet videos. There's been a lack of Muppet videos. There was interesting before the video at Lettuce Lake came out, there was a still picture, and it was, if you looked at it, it was obvious an ape suit, and it had a big white stripe down the top of its head, and it was submerged up to over its chest in the water, and it was kind of hilarious because of course it showed up on a news program, and they mocked it, and that unfortunately is one of those things that gets out there and the media jumps on it, and of course that's how the Bigfoot research community is represented a lot of times. So Finding Bigfoot continues on, and the Soldiers on, and in fact they have a new season coming up in January. And we keep hearing rumors that it's the last season. We've heard that for the last 2 or 3 years now. Any of you guys still watch Finding Bigfoot?
I do. I still enjoy it, even though it's kind of ridiculous sometimes, but I actually really enjoy it.
Julie, do you watch Finding Bigfoot?
Yeah. Yep, I watch it. I like Cliff a lot, and I enjoy watching him. And not to say I don't like the others either, but Cliff just seems to be, I don't know, more in the same line that I perceive things.
Trent, do you watch Are you a fan of Finding Bigfoot?
Yeah, actually, I do watch it, and I like that every once in a while they throw in a few things that, with all the stories out there, like Bigfoot throwing rocks or sticks or stalking a camp or things like that. I like the aspect that, because sometimes you don't think about things you don't think about, and there's so many stories and so many different things out there, and every once in a while they're plugging a few of those things in. So I actually enjoy watching and looking for those things.
Well, I can honestly say that I have not. Go ahead, Julie.
I'm sorry. The town hall meetings, I really enjoy that the most out of the show. That's the thing, because you see people that that you've talked to on there telling their story, and I always find that really fascinating, though, to hear the different stories from different parts of the country.
Yeah, and that's always been my favorite part of Finding Bigfoot. I actually have been on 2 episodes in bit parts, so kind of like what Trent is referring to, and you get behind the scenes and you see how much actual production there is to the shows, and it was interesting to watch the order that they record things, and then how you see it on TV doesn't necessarily line up. So, but I hear people bash Finding Bigfoot, and the thing is that it's a television show for entertainment, and they come up with a formula that's made them successful, and makes obviously must be making Animal Planet money, or they would not have, it wouldn't keep renewing it. So, and all the Cliff is an active Bigfooter. I know Cliff, and when he's not on TV playing a Bigfooter, he is actually out in the woods quite often, Bigfooting, and it's quite different than what you see on TV. I know Matt Moneymaker. He for a lot of the Bigfoot community is a bit of a villain, but if you get around Matt, he actually is a decent guy, and I spent some time with him a couple times out in the field, and he is who he is. So.
The show is actually, I think it actually draws some fairly positive attention to Bigfooting. I'll talk to a lot of people, and they think it's a big joke, some of them, but for the most part, it kind of brings Bigfooting kind of into the mainstream a little more than it would have.
Right.
And just me personally is that I think that, and from what I've heard, I don't know if this is true or not, but I've heard that the next season is going to have just a little bit different formula, I guess. But because I do believe that kind of the same old formula is getting tiring for me. But you're absolutely right, Gunn. You say that hey, it's making them money. That's if the old premise of if it ain't broke, don't fix it. But for me, to see something different, I understand that they may stay a little bit longer into some particular areas, as opposed to just a few days, doing the solo investigation and some of those things. So I think, boy, if they get into some really interesting areas, and I agree, probably one of my favorite parts is the actual town hall meetings and hearing the actual experiences. That's my favorite thing as well. But if they get into some really good areas that have some really good solid leads on sighting reports, and then actually stay there for a significant amount of time to actually do some serious investigation, I think that's going to be really cool. And that's kind of what I've heard. That's rumor, but I'm keeping my fingers crossed that formula changes just a little bit.
Yeah, and I agree with you, Kip. I mean, it's a lot of the what if factor, and that's what I love about the show, because they bring a lot of different things to the table. And just like the producers asked me when I was in Belize, they asked me, they said, "Do you truly believe in Bigfoot?" And I said, "How can you not believe in Bigfoot? You have, think about 100 years ago, 200 years ago, 300 years ago. We didn't have internet, we didn't have telephone, we didn't have mail systems, but yet we have explorers that travel the world now, and there's the same stories on every continent." And that, to me, is fascinating, how it can't be that coincidental.
No, finding Bigfoot, the cast members are well aware that what they put on the show is not what they actually do when they're out in the field Bigfooting. Not to the degree that, and it's like you said, it's a TV show, and Kip, you kind of nailed it on the head, is that it's raised awareness. That's what I tell people. It's raised awareness. It's kind of this generation's, in search of. It has weight, and I've had lots of people that have shared their encounters with me that may not have felt comfortable doing it before they saw it on TV. So kudos to Finding Bigfoot for continuing to raise public awareness of the subject, and not, are they going to find Bigfoot? I don't know. I hear some, maybe they will. One of these times they're spending a lot of time out in the field, so that's awesome. One of the other events from this year that took place was the Falcon Project. Controversial from the beginning. Basically, the concept was to take a team of people and put them out and give them the technology that really hasn't been done before, and have them basically live out in the field for starting out a period of 6 months. There was talk of airships, and with the high definition cameras, and what ended up happening was it crashed and burned basically before it ever got off the ground. Pun intended. But what was interesting is I was always supported by the idea of putting a group of people out in an area that had an active area that you could almost, for that long a period of time, if you had the technology, and it seemed like it had potential. And there were some folks that did actually show up at the time right before the project was supposed to start, and they reported a really good sighting and some activity in the limited time that they spent out there. And Bruce Kelly in the chat room was saying, "Good concept, bad management," and that's what I think it came down to. The idea was. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to mention that my overall first thought when I heard about this was that saying of, when it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. The concept was absolutely amazing, and help me remember the gentleman who was the
Wayne
part
Barnes.
of that project. Wayne Barnes. I actually spoke to him on the phone a couple of times. In my profession, I deal with. I'm actually an aviation manager involved with wildland fighting and other things, and so he and I had a conversation just about the airspace issues over national forest, over public lands, those types of things. Which in the long run, federal agencies. It's the FAA that manages airspace. Federal land management agencies don't manage airspace per se; they manage land. But he from the very start, when I was talking with him, he had some interesting responses and claims that who he had spoken to at various levels of government, which I kind of questioned a little bit. But in the long run, to me, it just from the very beginning, it was the the old adage of, if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. And to do something like that at that level, you're talking about some serious dollars, and
right.
It never seemed exactly right how it was ever going to happen. But so I was skeptical from the beginning, but hopeful that maybe something like that could work out. But anyway, that's just my 2 cents.
Well, was the idea seemed to have validity, but like you said, execution did not happen. So, Julie, do you have any thoughts on the Falcon project?
Well, yeah, I know that there were a lot of questions that were being raised that were asked over and over that were never exactly answered. It was kind of like a danced around the answer, never really gave the direct answer. And those questions, I believe, are some of the issues that caused it to crash and burn.
Exactly. In my conversation with William, it seemed like he was really kind of combative in terms of not, he wanted to poke people, and maybe it was because he didn't have the answers to the questions that were being asked, so to get combative was his defense. So, but the idea was, it was the year. I know that it's a project that he had worked on for a number of years because it came up back several years ago where they did had a meeting in Portland, and initially I believe that Derek Randles was somebody that they were looking at having participate, and Derek would have brought a lot to the table, but it just was an interesting concept that just did not come to fruition. But maybe sometime in the future somebody would, like you're saying, Kip, that was always one of my questions too, is the financing. The idea that you need some kind of big backer for that kind of project, and it just didn't happen.
Yeah,
so.
And I think some of the bigger questions were about the blimp, if you will, itself,
right,
and the protocol, and where is it, and that was the biggest question. I don't think anyone ever really answered. It was, is it really been created? Is it sitting in a warehouse somewhere? Nobody could really answer that question.
Right.
Yeah, it's probably in the house in the uniform.
Yeah, and I was like, everybody constantly asked that question, but it was, again, never really answered. And how can you have a project that you're calling the Falcon Project, and one of the major things in it is the blimp, if you will, again, going over the countryside, reporting back what's being seen, but you can't say where that blimp's at or if it's ever been created.
Right, and my understanding is there was not ever a blimp or prototype that was made, and I would have been fine with the concept of having the ground team out there for 6 months, and if they ever got the blimp or didn't get the blimp, that would there was two things. There was what was being put out there, there was a financial issue that were brought up about whether or not people that were investing their money were going to get what they were paying for. But just in concept, the idea of putting a team out there for 6 months was a great idea to me, with or without a blimp.
Yes, I agree totally.
Yeah.
I think that should have been the main focus to begin with, and the talk about a blimp or the prototype blimp should have been scrapped from day one, and just go with, having people out there for long periods of time, because that's the only way you're going to really find the evidence that is needed, is persistence out there. It's not going to be found in 1 and 2 day adventures out in the woods.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
I agree with you, Julie. It's going to take some serious bankroll it's going to take some serious dedication and to find people who have the time to be able to take work. Maybe they're retired, maybe there's some way to pay them, but yeah, absolutely, it's going to take some serious bankroll and some people that can do it. But this is the idea of going out there and having people investigate particular areas for 6 months at a time. I think that's pretty cool. I think that that could either get some good evidence or not, but at least I think that's a good solid chance. Otherwise, I think a lot of us have areas I think we go out to and we want to have some sort of an encounter or have an idea of having some evidence, but man, it is a shot in the dark. It's pretty much luck at this point. So
yeah, it sadly it did not get off the ground. Again, pun intended. One of the interesting things that did come out of this year was at a report put out by the North American Wood Ape Conservancy, the Ouachita, that was it, Ouachita Project monograph, a 229-page document covering their activities and the evidence that they collected and a lot of detail that came out in March. Julie, did you have a chance to look at that?
Yeah, actually I did. When it first came out, I spent some time reading that. It, like you said, it was a couple hundred pages, and I read it over the course of a couple weeks, on and off when I had the chance to sit down and read it. There was a lot of interesting information in that, that you could tell, like the wood knocking, the pattern of the wood knocking that they received. It's that long-term study is, again, why I think it's so important to be able to be in an area for a long period of time to begin to establish patterns of where they might be and, what different, do they follow the food, do they, that sort of thing. And I thought that was a really good report. And unfortunately, some people won't even read it because they are against the idea of shooting a Bigfoot. So it is kind of a controversial ideal, but I think it's I think all in all it was a really good report.
Did you get a chance to peruse the report?
Peruse is probably a really good way to put it. I haven't sunk my teeth into it quite to the degree that Julie has, but just knowing that the participants, like Bob and Kathy Strain, some of those folks, those are some highly credible people that I think that are really taking a good scientific look at things. Of course, Kathy has a scientific biological background. She's works with in the federal government, in a capacity. I believe it's not anthropology. Help me out here. Archaeology. I'm sorry. So I think that adds quite a bit of credibility to anything that group is putting out. And I get that it's a controversial thing that you have people that are very upset about the whole kill no kill type of thing. But honestly, until we have a biological specimen, and people have asked, well, could you pull the trigger? No, I couldn't. If I had a Sasquatch or Bigfoot, a wood ape, whatever you want to call it, in the sights of a rifle, I could not pull the trigger. I would not. I'm not going to demonize anybody that does, but I do believe that we need a physical biological specimen if we ever want to prove the existence. Camera traps.
Oh, I totally agree.
Nothing is going to suffice. So.
What about a skeleton?
I think that would help. I think that's a good possibility.
But yeah.
But even then,
if you watch, if you read, if you're paying attention to what in other fields, in fact, earlier this year they found, actually it was last year, but the article came out, I believe, in September in National Geographic, and they found Homo naledi in South Africa, some cave in an area where they'd found other bone before, but another species that had, and of course it was all bones. And you got to wonder where are all the Bigfoot bones?
Yeah, that could be a whole show, right?
What's that?
I said that topic could be a whole show right there. Where are the
We'll do it later. What were you going to say, Kip?
Oh, just, yeah, I mean, I always get that question, too. Well, where are the bones? How come we haven't found this or that? I don't know. Do they bury them? Do they eat them? Do they, porcupines eat them? That's just the thing. It always cracks me up because there's so much passion and frustration between different groups over something that nobody really knows. So it just always cracks me up how nobody knows. We can only kind of have theories and whatnot. So who knows? Maybe somebody's found one and they just don't want to come forward because they don't want to be looked at as a lunatic. I don't know.
But then again, also, how many times are we out there and we come across some bones and go, oh, that was an elk, that was a deer, that must have been a bear, and then we keep walking. I mean, maybe we come across the bones and we just discard it to be some animal that we're familiar with.
Absolutely.
Yeah. First of all,
I've never seen a bear skeleton. I've never seen a. I wouldn't say that I spend a tremendous amount of time in the woods, but I get out. But I've never seen a bear skeleton. I've never seen a cougar or a mountain lion skeleton. You typically don't. I've never found a porcupine skeleton, so I'm sure they're out there. But those are there's a rare. It's a rarity. And then you have something like a Sasquatch or Bigfoot, and there's obviously different theories onto populations and those types of things. But again, I bring up the unicorn. It's about trying to find an actual unicorn. It's just it's a needle in a haystack.
Yeah, and a friend of mine was saying, well, it's a needle in a haystack, and the needle keeps moving. So.
Right, and a few weeks ago I did an experiment. In the area where I'm at here in Ohio, I know. The ratio of deer, the ratio of raccoon, the ratio of possum, squirrels, all that. And I did an experiment. I took a 4-hour hike into the countryside, and what I saw when I was out there, knowing all those animals are out there and that they exist, I saw 2 squirrels in 4 hours.
Well,
so that
obviously the rest of those squirrels probably were in a portal.
Yes, they were, and they were watching me from way up high.
Right. Hey, we've become masters of our universe. I think they have too.
Right. So, you would think with all of these creatures we know are out there, we'd be stumbling over them on our way up the hillside, but that wasn't the case at all. And, normally I never really stopped to think about it. Well, did you see a raccoon when you were out there? Did you see, you really don't think about those things. But when I did that experiment, that was very telling, And I'm not saying they're an 8-foot-tall bipedal, but I'm just saying you would think with the number of squirrels or raccoons or deers that we have in this part of Ohio, you would be seeing more than 2 in a 4-hour time frame.
Right, and then you take population, like you say, of known animals, and we're talking probably the least populous animal in the woods, and likely the most intelligent animal in the woods. And they don't, if you took a person out there that was reasonably intelligent and didn't want to be seen, you're decreasing the chances of there actually being an encounter. And there actually are fairly regular encounters with Bigfoot. So.
Well, exactly.
I mean, go ahead. Yeah. I mean,
I didn't see any bones either, by the way, when I was out there on that 4-hour trek. Not a deer bone, not anything. So, and that was just a 4-hour trip, straight in and straight out without exploring, every single path. But I did go off of path. I went down by the creeks. I trailed the creek side. And you'd see, I didn't see that many raccoon or deer tracks along the side of the creek either, like I thought I would. Obviously they're there to drink by the waterside, but it was just very eye-opening.
It was really interesting. I was with Bart and Jamie Leiterman. There was a big group of us a couple of years ago, and this was in February. We were up near Crescent City, California, kind of on the coast of the Redwoods, and had gotten into an area that was closed off, that was owned by the parks, the California state parks, but hadn't been developed yet. And so we were camped back in there, and this was it was a complete, absolute dead zone. I mean, there wasn't even birds. I mean, there was nothing. And, we were looking around for different pieces of evidence. We got out at night, whatnot. The only thing that we ever saw and only captured, Bart had a game cam out by his vehicle, and the only thing we captured, a fox walked by in the middle of the night, and it just made me wonder about how many things that we walk past that are actually there. It's a dead zone. It looked dead to all of us, but how many things do we walk past that we just don't even know are there? Obviously, you see a lot of sighting reports about Sasquatches where they're tree peekers, or if you look at the thermal footage that Bart took in the Sierras, that was talk about luck, just having the right angle at the right place at the right time to see some sort of body heat coming from behind some trees. I mean, it really makes you wonder how many times we have driven past, whether it's on a busy 4-lane freeway and on I-5 maybe going through Oregon, or on a Forest Service road at night that we just don't see. I always wonder if the ones that run across the road are the stupid ones, and we got to see the dumb ones, or I don't know. But it does make you wonder. I'm certain there's a lot of things that we are just, our eyes aren't necessarily picking up. We're seeing everything we can, but the survival of most animals depends a lot on not being seen by us. So kind of makes you wonder.
Mm-hmm.
Well, even when we do see animals, known animals, how fast a deer or elk takes off, and you try and find them, scan the landscape and try to find them. You know damn well that they know where you're at, and they're watching you. So it's amazing that they disappear in plain sight.
And their biggest thing is to either not be seen by you, and if they're seen by you, to avoid you and get away from you. Mm-hmm. So,
right. So, I'm going to touch on a little bit of a paranormal topic. It's the elephant in the room. It's the portal in the room. One of the interesting things that happened this year was in April, I believe, Dr. Matt Johnson held a habituation conference in Washington and announced that in his research area in Southern Oregon, which he dubbed SOA, that there'd been an incident there with Adam Davies and John Carlton that involved a portal opening up and some of what he refers to as guardians of the portal. And for over a year, Adam Davies had not said yay or nay about this report being true or not, and he did come out this year in an interview and confirm that there had been something that had occurred. There seems to be a little bit of difference of opinion about what exactly the nature of it was, but let's go around. Julie, what do you think about portals and Bigfoot? A comment in it sounds like a movie. Guardians of the Portal.
Yeah. Well, I did watch the video that the Good Doctor put out and read the story several times, and I'm familiar with what Adam Davies had said, and my biggest issue is we just don't have any scientific proof that portals even exist to begin with. That's my biggest hang up, you know. I'm not saying if portals were real, they wouldn't be around a Bigfoot. I'm just saying we have no proof that portals even exist as we would know them showing up on the countryside and guardians come out and that sort of thing. I'm more of a scientific approach on things, so and I don't think any real exclusive, verifiable evidence has been produced yet for that. Right.
Yeah, that's part of the issue with extraordinary claims such as the portal idea is that they're almost, they're going to be anecdotal stories at best. It just, for me, it was interesting that they came out and something either all the and I have actually been in contact with all the people that were present at the time, and they all swore up and down that is what their story is what happened. So they're either lying or they had something happen. What the nature of it is, I cannot say or get into. I had a discussion.
Yeah, I think that I think Adam saw something. I'm not going to say that Adam's lying. I'm not going to say what he saw or didn't see, but I'm just saying for me, I would need scientific evidence that a portal is even a possibility to what they saw before I would believe that story.
Kip, you're a fan of SOA.
Yeah. I guess for me, I think that we get caught up in semantics and terminology, and so when the term portal and guardians and some of these other things kind of got tossed into it, I think that it kind of took away from the credibility. From what I understand, there was something visible and there were some sort of entities, but to call them guardians or to call it an actual portal versus, some sort of unexplained phenomena. I think that if different terminology was used to explain some of what was seen, that I think that it would have probably been easier for people to maybe accept and kind of understand and or not understand, but accept and be curious of. It's almost like Bigfoot sightings in the sense that you really, a sighting experience is a very personal experience. To ask somebody to, say like Derek Randall, ask Derek Randall, hey, prove to me that you had rocks thrown at you from a Sasquatch and that you turned around and you saw this thing. He can't prove that. It's a very personal experience, and I think that, there's enough mystery in the universe and in the world that I just don't know. I think that undoubtedly all three of them saw something. To call it a portal, to call it the entities, call them guardians. To call them guardians. I think that's where the problem lies. I think people start kind of getting caught up in semantics. But I also know that, it's having been involved with Bart, with the Sierra Project, with his thermal footage, having been there, having helped with the recreation, having been able to see the angles of where, the footage was taken, etc. I was there to see exactly where everything happened. Yet, everybody has an opinion. Oh, it was just those guys that were walking around at the campfire. Well, no, that's not true, because I saw the camera angles, I saw where the fire pit was, this, that, and the other. Everybody has an opinion who wasn't there, who didn't experience it.
Right.
You're never gonna prove it. You know what I mean? Take a picture, put it on the internet. Somebody's gonna debunk. Oh, well, look at that. That's just the glow from whatever whatever city. I've experienced some interesting things myself. I was out with, actually, it was Bart and I were in Redwoods National Park, and we were filming and looking out, and I actually had, I think it was a Gen 4 night vision, but we were at the top of this area looking down. There was a road, and we both saw it. There was this light coming up the road. We could never figure out where it was coming from. It wasn't the town. I'm not saying it was, I wouldn't know what it was, but we saw this light. You can't explain it. I'm telling you what I saw. Can I prove it? No, there's no way. So anyways, I guess getting back to the whole solar thing is that I believe we saw something. There's no way they can actually prove it. It's a very personal experience. I think the getting caught up in the semantics of what what they're calling it, or other people are calling it, takes away from probably their experience. But I think probably something happened. What it was, I don't know.
Well, I don't think even the people that were present know exactly what to make of it. So
yeah,
and I think you hit on a good point too. Throughout Bigfooting, some of the terminology we add when we label things. One would be zapping is another good, or eye shine is another good example of those things that when you label them like that, when you call something zapping rather than just describing the experience that you may have, it does give it a certain negative connotation and makes it sound more, regardless of it. We need to report what happens, and I've said before it's no more scientific to exclude those reports that include elements that we may not have personally experienced or cannot easily explain than it is to, it needs to be included, part of the record. They're not things that can be measured or confirmed, but there is enough of it, that it probably needs to be included in the record. There's also there's the tendency of people to take two separate events and merge them without to connect the dots. I had this experience, and then I saw Bigfoot, so therefore the two are related in Bigfoot. I saw a UFO and I saw Bigfoot, so Bigfoot pilots UFOs. That's not, that isn't, and there's a lot of that kind of reporting of and conclusion drawing that probably isn't accurate and does not mean. If you saw, the only time I'm going to tell you that I know that Bigfoot is an alien flying UFOs is if I saw Bigfoot flying a UFO or being down out of a UFO. Otherwise, I got two separate things going on, and that could happen. I mean, in theory, you could have orbs here and then Bigfoot over here. It's part of the problem is when people take them and merge them together. I also have, a question about is Bigfoot paranormal for you and he's flesh and blood for me? I mean, pretty much we're talking about the same animal, unless there is some other, then we're going down another path. But
well, so my wife is a biologist by trade, and she was working in the Alaska National Forest in the early '90s on basically an owl hooting crew, so they were doing surveys for spotted owl. And we're in the middle of nowhere, 2 o'clock in the morning, absolutely middle of nowhere. And she hears this, and this is years later, it was like, oh, well, that's kind of interesting. I remember this experience. But they were out in the middle of nowhere, and they heard this whack, whack, whack. And they looked at each other and thought, who is cutting wood out here in the middle of nowhere at 2 o'clock in the morning on the Alaska National Forest? And then followed by, well, maybe she said it was a couple of minutes later, a tree came crashing down. So, interesting coincidence. Not sure what it was, but some people will come right out and say, well, that was a Bigfoot. Well, there's nothing else that it could have been. When in reality, maybe some Bigfoot researchers were out there and whacking a tree, and then another pissed off, a bear who was rubbing his back. I don't know. It's without actually, like you said, with physically seeing something to correlate the experience with. It's hard to say. It becomes it's compelling evidence, but it's damning evidence, as Bart would say. And he'll say that about his thermal footage too, is that it's compelling, but it's not damning because it's
can't convict a man on it.
Yeah.
So, Trent, do you have any feedback on the idea of portals and Bigfoot?
Well, I've never seen a portal, but there's a lot of things that I've never seen that I actually believe in. And I won't mention Sundays for 3 hours. Do you think about things you don't think about? Are they out there? Are they not? All I know is, as smart as we are and as scientific as we are, the best we can come up with is that we only use 10% of our brains. So why question it? Or why not question it? Could it be? Could it not be? I don't know, but I'm not saying it's not out there. But I'll tell you this, if I'm out there in the middle of the night in the woods and I see a portal, I'm not running from it. I'm going to run towards it. That's all I can say about that.
Well, if you would please wear a GoPro when you're out in the woods, we'd appreciate it.
Hey, right. Hey, it's only a matter of time. We didn't used to have technology. We have it now, and it's only a matter of time.
Right, and that's the thing is, we talk about that science doesn't allow for certain things, and I hope to God that we're not at the pinnacle of knowing everything that there is, because we're kind of screwed if that's the case. If science has all the answers at this point, we're screwed. Because we got if you look at our civilization at this point, we got a lot of room for growth potential. So hopefully.
Hey, well, yeah. Look at it. Back in the mid 1800s. I don't remember which governor or president it was, but they stated, we are at the peak of our potential. We have invented everything there is to invent. We have evolved as far as we can evolve. That was 150 years ago. Look at us now from 150 years ago. Again, do you think about things you don't think about?
Right. Absolutely. So I'm going to take a quick call. I know that Henry May is on the line here. Hold on just a sec. Henry, are you there?
Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
Hey, Henry.
Hey. Very good show so far, guys. I've been enjoying listening to you guys talk about the various things that have happened in the year 2015 in the Bigfoot world. Of course, let's not forget about, I'm sure you'll get to it before too long, the Newsweek edition that came out last month. The Newsweek Bigfoot, which, by the way, Kip won a copy of it in my contest. So,
I also gave away a copy of Newsweek in our Monster X contest. So
cool.
Yeah, that was interesting. I mean, that for Newsweek to come out with a whole magazine, a whole issue on the topic of Bigfoot was pretty cool. I mean, I'm pretty sure there a lot of Bigfooters are out there have a copy of that. I know I have a couple.
Oh, yeah. Three people won in my contest, and then I got my dad a copy of it too, so he's got a copy of it, and I made sure I got a copy of it, so I wasn't about to miss out on it. And I haven't received it yet, but I know that I won some Sasquatch coffee in one of your recent drawings there, Gunner.
It will be on its way. What is today? Monday, tomorrow.
Cool.
Oh, when you get it, you're gonna love life. It's gonna change your world.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I've tried it. I've already tried some Sasquatch coffee already earlier this year. So, and Mark DeWorth had. I know that Mark DeWorth gave out free samples to everybody at the Ohio Bigfoot Conference this year, and everybody got one in their goodie bag. So.
Well, thanks for the plug, Henry.
Oh, sure. Yeah, I mean, it's excellent coffee. It really is. Shannon, I like Shannon's endorsement of it. Damn delicious coffee. Or what was it Paul McLaughlin said on Twin Peaks? Damn good cup of coffee. But, what's that?
Did you have to drink? Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say whenever
What I was going to say was that, René Dahinden had an interesting observation about how the Bigfoot world kind of goes in cycles. He said, we've been spending the last 10 or 15 years just spinning our wheel. Nobody asks questions. Nobody asks advice. And he said, and I get so sick and bitter and short-tempered and nasty when one more person comes up with something that they don't know. I'm paraphrasing what he said, but but René had some interesting observations of things. I won't repeat what he said about those who believe in the paranormal Sasquatch, but suffice to say that it's some language that wouldn't fit on a family show.
That's
right.
Yes, he was strongly opinionated. That is for sure.
Yeah, but I figure the way I look at it, I mean, yes, there is that controversy of the paranormal Sasquatch, and that is the elephant in the room. I kind of take a position of, unless I see it for myself, I can't say if it's true one way or the other. So, there are those who swear, oh yeah, I saw a Sasquatch disappear right in front of me, or I saw a portal, or I saw this, or I saw that. I can't say for sure. I don't think any of us can.
Well,
until we make that observation.
We can't. There's very little that we know for sure about Sasquatch in the first place. So, for me, it's just I think like Julie talks about is I have a very pragmatic. If I can't prove it, then and until I experience it, I'm only about 98.5%. I think it's moved up a little bit this year, but sure that there's even a Bigfoot, and that anybody who's had a encounter is crazy, and that includes our co-host and my good friend Shane, who has. I reserve about 1.5% for my own confirmation experience. Because you just have to.
I think the main drive in the Bigfoot world, since we still haven't been able to prove that it exists or produce any really great videos since 1967, and that one is still controversial. Any photos that aren't blurry, I think we need to focus on the flesh and blood animal, creature, if you will, and learning what we can about that before we step into another whole dimension of paranormal.
Yeah.
And if we don't, I think we're giving it a disservice by not, that's a whole other area. And I'm not saying that people that see things like that, I'm not saying they didn't see that. I'm just saying for me personally, I'm more interested in the flesh and blood area of it and, trying to produce the evidence to prove that they exist for myself, because I want to know what they are. I want to know what my ancestors saw in 1765 in the Uwharrie Forest.
Yeah.
And that.
And let's see. Was it Cliff has said? I'm no longer interested in if they are. I'm interested in what they are.
Yeah. I know that they're there.
And that's a good point, Julie. When I went to Belize 8 months ago, they sent an expedition in right where I was, within a 20-mile square radius, 1 year prior. And they were in there for 9 weeks, and they came out with 6 species of animals we didn't even know existed on the planet.
And there you go. I mean, there are, I think one of the difficulties for people is that, you're talking about in an American forest and the size of the animal. People don't, when the layman or person who doesn't really pay attention to the subject thinks that it's impossible, we should have found a body. Where's the body? Where's the bones? And they don't think of, they think that everything's been discovered and don't pay attention to the fact that the quantity of new discoveries that are made every year, all the time. New species are being discovered, and the vastness of the territory that we're talking about. If you go up in a plane over the Pacific Northwest, the western region, there's a lot more area that is actually woodland and wild, and than there is that's populated. And how little of that actually we ever, as our species, ever steps foot in. I don't remember how many planes there are that are lost in the woods of the Pacific Northwest. It's some, crazy number that have never been, the planes that have gone down and never been found.
Well, that's a really good point. Being just in my fire career, dealing with aircraft, flying in helicopters, flying in a lot of fixed wing. In particular, there was this one time when we were flying in a helicopter from a place in Alaska called Manly Hot Springs. We were supposed to retrieve some smoke jumpers that were north of Fort Yukon. There was about an hour and 45 minute flight in a Boeing 707 straight from Manly Hot Springs straight out to where the smoke jumpers were, where we had to pick them up. And just talking with the pilot, we were flying over this relatively vast area, and just kind of talked about the fact that, how many places have we flown over where a person has never walked, at least in the modern age? And you can do that in the Pacific Northwest. There's vast areas of just forested ecosystem that are just places that are probably have been untouched. So to think that, that if we go out and we don't see something, that there's nothing there, that's pretty ridiculous.
Yeah.
In my opinion.
But going back to the paranormal Sasquatch thing, Tom Powell, he's a good friend of a lot of us. He sort of advocates the paranormal Sasquatch, and whether you agree with him or not, his books are really fascinating. I have not read his newest one. I do have it in the queue to read, though. Matter of fact, probably the next book I read. I'm reading Aaron G. Filler's The Upright Ape right now. Really interesting book. but I do want to read Tom Powell's new one because I understand he does delve more into the paranormal stuff, or does he, Gunner? I guess he does because I think you read the book already.
I have not read it. I'm actually reading Joe Belard's book at the moment. But
I'm sorry. I didn't.
So, but yeah, I mean, it's again. Tom Powell now talks about, he's not trying to prove anything. He's just having experience. He's going out without, he's concluded that his presentation, he goes from wearing, a lab coat and takes it off as a demonstration of the conversion from and I knew Tom back when he wasn't an aper. It's interesting to me is how many people, and some of that may be because they get frustrated at not being able to, come up with hard evidence. So it must be that they're something more than terrestrial. Who knows? But it's interesting to talk about. But it isn't, like I said, and it's. I am respectful of people that say I have some friends that I'm surprised in what. I hadn't seen them in a while, and now they have think that there's something more to these animals than that they're not simply apes.
Right.
And they could be right. I mean, as we talked about, everything that we talk about is pretty much theory, and then we all could be wrong. So.
Yeah, you mentioned Joe's book. I do want to read it. I have not purchased my copy of that one yet. I do want to purchase that one, definitely, for sure. Matter of fact, it was Joe. I actually won an auction for Tom Powell's fictional book from Joe. So I got it from him. Shady Neighbors. Shady Neighbors is good, by the way. If anybody's never read it, yeah, I would highly recommend reading Shady Neighbors by Tom Powell.
Very good. Well, thanks for calling in, Henry.
Well, no problem, guys. Y'all have a good one, and Happy New Year.
Thanks, Henry.
You too.
Bye.
Bye. Well, Henry touched on the Newsweek edition. Does everybody... Kip, did you get your copy? You did get a copy from Henry, apparently.
I did. I won the contest, one of his contests, and I never win anything, and I won that.
Well, that's not true. Clearly, that's not true. I believe I've seen numerous awards for Bigfooter of the Year in your particular region. So.
Oh, those are given. Being the 4-time winner of the American River Bigfoot Society's Rice South chapter, I don't like to brag, but
you're too modest.
Well, that's one of my goals next year is to try and not try and portray myself as being so awesome. So it's going to take work, but I'm going to try.
I know. Julie, did you get the Newsweek edition?
Yep, I got it. I had it within 3 days after it was available, of course. And I wanted to add it to my collection of Bigfootery stuff, no matter what the content was. You got to have that. So after I started reading it, it was fascinating to see they included the whole Zana story in there again.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That whole story, it's like it becomes an entity all of itself with this Zana over the years. But I think they've got a handle on what it is now. But there for a while, everybody was thinking that Zana was a Bigfoot or a Neanderthal, or and just shows you how our thoughts and what we think it could be when it comes down to the scientific end of it. It gives us the answers we need, and that kind of shot the whole Zana story down as a Bigfoot, which was kind of depressing. That was a story I've known for years. we've been talking about that for years. But I just found it interesting they included that in there and all the happenings around it, you know, that very educational for people who may not be familiar with it. Just that article pretty much, you know, synopsis of what all happened with that story.
And Trent, did you get your copy of Newsweek?
No, actually, I didn't see that one, unfortunately.
Okay. And I think it's still out on the newsstands for a little bit. I think it was their December issue. So.
Oh, I'm gonna have to go get it.
One of the other interesting things, if for those that attended the Sasquatch Summit up in Ocean Shores in Washington that Johnny Madsen puts on in November, was the Olympic Project shared that they are actually investigating a potential nesting site up in Washington State, and shared pictures, and I had heard about it previously because I'm as a member of the Olympic Project. We talked about it. It was kept under wraps till the summit, but the descriptions of it is pretty interesting. Derek Randles and a couple other members of the Olympic Project have been in there. Originally, what happened was a gentleman who counts timber was out in this area, and it's very difficult to get to. And he was out there doing his counts, and this was an area that had not been logged, I guess, in like 50 years. And he got in there. He went into this area where nobody basically had been in a very long time, and found all these what looked like nests. And from the description, they sound a lot like nests that gorillas make. And they actually found out on a point, like a nest by itself, and two rocks that looked like they'd been banged together for some time with there was scratch marks on both of these two rocks. At least that's what they appeared like. So, and there's, I can't remember the number of these nests that were in this area, but I do know that the Olympic Project has trail cams up there. They actually retrieved them, I think, in October, and replaced the video cards and stuff in there. And I don't think that there wasn't anything. The area had not been visited since they initially had been in there, and it's pretty interesting, and it will, maybe something will come of that. I know that there's trail cams out there now, and it would be interesting to see if anything uses them with any frequency. So, Kip, what Bigfoot adventures have you been on this in 2015? Are we still here?
Sorry about that. I just had to.
Okay.
I had to pause for a second because I didn't want to interfere with things. One more time. What was the question?
So, what Bigfooting adventures have you been on this year?
Well, I've been on a couple. I'm trying to think. Of course, the one that I really always look forward to is going down into Bluff Creek with the Bluff Creek Project, helping with the trail cam retrieval, and going on some great hikes with Robert Leiterman. That's just a great time. This year was kind of funky. Ended up going up to Bluff Creek, and my father was in the hospital, and I visited him. I had planned to go back to see him on that Sunday, and finally got some cell coverage when I was up there, and found out he had passed away while I was camping. So I kind of cut short my trip a little bit. But it's interesting. There was a couple of gentlemen that were up there. One had come and camped at Louse Camp since the early 80s and had gone there once and had met Renee DeHinden, and actually brought pictures that and correspondence that he had with Renee, and it was absolutely priceless to read some of these letters. And if you can imagine, they're either on a typewriter or handwritten. You didn't have, computers and things going on back then, but so it was just that kind of an intimate snapshot of Renee and his feisty way he verbalized things. It was interesting. He was talking a lot about how he didn't believe Freeman, and he had this really disdain for what's his name? The skeletons in the Smithsonian. What is it?
Oh, Dr. Krantz.
Grover Krantz.
Yes.
Yeah, he had made some comment, and it's now kind of almost like a catchphrase. But he said somebody must have left the door or the gate open at the Looney Farm or something, or the mental hospital or something. It was hilarious though. So he just had this really feisty thing, and he had this absolute disdain for Dr. Krantz, which was interesting. But it was fun to get to know somebody who had actually met the man and had spent time with them there in Louse Camp. And of course, spending time in Louse Camp, in Bluff Creek, going to the actual site where the PG film was filmed. It's just, it has such a historical background, and to spend time there knowing that, sitting around the campfire thinking what it would have been like to just sit around that campfire with John Green, with Renee DeHinden, with Bob Titmus, with some of these people from long ago. And, of course, listening, Stephen Streifert, the owner of Bigfoot Books, he's a part of of that Bluff Creek project, a big part of it. And he is just a walking Bigfooting encyclopedia. And so to sit back and, and talk with him, and he talks a little bit about, some of the history of Bigfooting and some of the things that occurred there. It's always really a treat to get to go up to that particular gathering in July each year. That was kind of the big one for me. Let's see, I had the opportunity to spend a couple of nights over in the Redwoods. Bart came up from Monterey, and we met over south of Eureka and did a couple of night investigations. But all in all, I didn't get to spend an exorbitant amount of time. Fire season was pretty busy. I was gone most of the summer on fire assignments and whatnot. So, but I did have some good trips and had a good time.
Good. Trent, we know that you spent some time this year out in Belize without much clothing, and actually without a stitch of clothing. Tell us a little bit about your experience on Naked and Afraid, and have you been out since then, or before that? Are you actively looking for Bigfoot?
Well, yeah. Let me address your first comment there. I like clothing more than I like not clothing. When I'm camping and sleeping out in the woods at night, anyway. And for those of you that don't know, Naked and Afraid, it's a reality TV show. Discovery wanted to create the most extreme reality show. And your clothes, I mean, seriously, when you're laying there in your tent, in your sleeping bag, and you hear something out there, you put your head under your sleeping bag. It's not going to save you. I got news for you. But it makes you feel better. So Discovery said, let's take everything of comfort away. And so you go live for a month out in extreme condition for 21 days with no clothes, nothing. I had a machete. And you have to build your shelter. You have to do this stuff. And at night, I was in the jungles of Belize, and you hear things outside. the days were great. The birds, the parrots, there were 50, 60 parrots in the tree that I built my shelter on. And you hear them singing, you hear them chirping, and then the sun goes down. And the noises change from the trees to the ground. And I had something stalking my shelter almost every night, and it kept coming around the shelter. And when I say stalking, it didn't walk right up to it. And with my experience with my Bigfoot encounter, not knowing, I mean, the unknown is amazing. And all the little things that run through your mind. So that was my experience. I spent 21 days in Belize. I had to eat spiders and gophers for 21 days to survive. And
your experience with the gopher there kind of reminded me, was reminiscent a little bit of Caddyshack.
Oh, I would have loved to have had a condiment. When I was eating the gopher, all I could think of was, oh my gosh, I miss salt and pepper. It's that basic. And but the thing that spurred my Bigfoot experience out there is this animal kept coming up to my shelter, and it would for 45 minutes just stalk the shelter back and forth, north, south, east, west, and it would come up to it and it would push on the shelter, and you could hear it breathing these big, deep breaths. And it even got so intense one night, they gave me an emergency radio. The crew was about an hour away, but I called them on the radio. I'm like, something's stalking the shelter. And they're like, well, you have a machete. And I'm like, yeah, but it's 16 inches long. I have to be 16 inches away to defend myself. And I'm naked. So I don't feel very comfortable. And so they said, just secure yourself. And they came up. And they had a scout. On every episode, they have a scout, an indigenous person that knows the terrain of the land. And he did his perimeter, and he says, it's not a jaguar. They thought it was a tapir, a jungle cow, but those things are like 500 pounds. No footprints, no tracks, no anything. And we were about 2 weeks into this, and I heard the producer talking to the scout, and he says, did you find footprints? Because they would set up cameras, infrared cameras around the shelter. They would set up sound mics all around the perimeter of the mountain. And so anything that came up, they would at least hear, and then the infrared would maybe catch it or maybe not. But the producer said to the scout, he says, hey, did you find any footprints today? Because their sound mics picked everything up. And he says, no, we can't find anything. There's no footprints. It's so strange. And I looked at the producer, and I just says, hey, I've been walking around here for 2 weeks. You don't see my footprints. And he says, well, yeah, you walk upright and you're flat-footed. And I just looked at him and I said, I know, right? And then there was that awkward silence, and all of a sudden you see his brain click. And he hops on his satellite phone and he starts Googling Bigfoot legends of Belize. But it was amazing. They would set bait out, and every night it would take the bait, but they never ever caught it on infrared. They never got any images of it, but their sound mics picked it up throughout the camp. Now, if you watch the episode, they make you think that it's a jaguar every night. The growls weren't there every night, but we don't know what's out there. We don't know what's going on. A year prior to me going out there, an expedition came back with 6 species of animals we've never even heard of before that we had to record. So, gosh, what really do we know? But that's why I always keep saying it's only a matter of time. We have cell phones. Everybody has a camera on them nowadays. It's only a matter of time before we catch something now. So, gosh, I've been following this since I was 10 years old, and every story I can get my hands on, I do it, and it's fascinating to me. Some of them that aren't real, but the ones that I like are the people in the communities that are on the city council, that are high leaders in the community church, that are coming forward and they're saying, here's my experience. And those people, they're not doing it for show. They're doing it because they want to share an experience. And those are the stories that I like to hear, because because it's not for fame and glory. It's for, oh my gosh, here's what happened. Here's what we saw. So, and my experience when I was 10 years old, when I was in a tent and Bigfoot actually laid down on the tent, and all the neighbors saw him. Everybody, there's so many different reports around my neighborhood. It was a life-changing event, and that actually opened my eyes to say, you know what? We don't know everything out there. We don't know every single thing. We're a society that has to know everything. There are so many things we don't know. There are so many things that we're just looking at, and it's a matter of time. It's going to come. There's going to all of a sudden one day pop up something, and we're all going to go, wow, that's what we were all looking for.
Pretty good. Well, we've had, for those you don't know, I am an active Bigfoot researcher, as is my co-host Shane, and along with being members of the Olympic Project, we're also have a group here in Oregon called the Tillamook Forest Research Group. And this year, one of our members actually had a daylight sighting in our research area, so that was pretty exciting. We get a lot of audio stuff in our area, but to have someone see one in the area is pretty exciting, and kind of spurs us on to keep looking, and you wonder after a while because of a lack of evidence. And to me, audio is the most open evidence. It's most open to interpretation or perhaps misinterpretation. But that was really cool. And just recently, we had some pretty severe flooding in this area, and there's an area where somebody actually contacted Shane, and there's a little enclave of houses close to our research area that apparently the people have talk with each other when the Bigfoots are in the area and share information, and we found out about it. We're pretty excited to go talk to some of these people and see what they have to say. You never know when you walk into something like that, is how long they've been having experiences, what the nature of the experiences are, and how you can use that information to further your research or create patterns or predictive behavior or something. So, pretty cool. So as far as it, we're still tonight. We're approaching the end of 2015. Do we know any more now than we did when we started this year, Julie?
Well, we know portals might exist.
Okay.
No, I think the thing is we've had some more, serious researchers wanting to join in and find out what's going on and do things the right way. And we've got a lot of push on the DNA collection now, ways to collect it. And I know that the Olympic Project has the DNA kits available that they've talked about before. And I think that's important. Even though we don't have a specimen to compare it to, I still think it's important to collect DNA and try not to contaminate it in the process.
Exactly. Yep.
And there seems to be a bigger push on the proper way of DNA collection.
Trent, what do you think? Are we closer to finding an answer, or than we were at the beginning of the year?
I definitely think we're closer. And you said a few minutes ago, there's a lot more audio than there is visual. When I was out in the jungle, they had mics set up, and they had infrared cameras set up. Every single morning, those producers would as fast as they could once the time came, would come up to my shelter. They'd grab the equipment. They would watch the video. They would listen to the sound files because they wanted to know what happened, because it was ongoing every night. The sound files picked up everything. The video files picked up nothing. And they were so confused. This is the Discovery Channel, who spends millions of dollars to send people out in the wild. And the producers would ask the locals, why are we not getting this on video? And I remember one night the local said to the producer, he says, animals are smart. Have you ever looked through a night vision camera or scope? When there's a light source, it's really bright. You can walk around it. You know where it is. He says these animals can walk around that video all night long. He says, but they can't hide from the sound. And that's exactly what he told them. So, yeah, obviously there's a lot more sound files than our video files. Are we closer? Yes. Do we have more technology? Yes. Are we on the verge of, I'm telling you, I know that it's just a matter of time. I keep saying that. But with the technology, with what's going on, are we closer? Every time technology gets better, every month, every year, yes, we're absolutely closer, because there is no doubt in my mind that there's something out there. But I'll tell you what, as we live in our world and we think we're masters of what we do, those animals out there, they live in their world, and I promise you they are masters of what they do. Because their every single day life is live or die survival. Ours is, Christmas is here, pay off our credit cards. Let's go eat out of the fridge. Those animals out there in the woods, every single day it is do or die for them. It's not for us humans, who, again, like I say, only use 10% of our brains.
Right. I totally agree with that.
Kip, are we any closer? Are we ever going to figure this out?
Boy, I'll tell you what. You think back, some of the strongest evidence that we have, and this is not taken away from people's personal experiences. Like I've said, there are people in this field, excuse me, that are knowers. There's people that are believers, and they're skeptics. But we still have some of the strongest evidence that we have, footprint evidence, but then the PG film, and that was 1967. So, are we any closer? I respectfully disagree. I don't think that we're any closer. I think that we're kind of, I don't want to say spinning our wheels. Do we need to keep trying? Absolutely. I think that there's enough of a mystery out there that still keeps it fun. It keeps it interesting. So until we have a physical biological specimen, I think that sound files, even footprint evidence, fuzzy videos, fuzzy pictures, it's going to be a hard sell to really have the general public believe that this is something that's real. So I'm still hopeful. For me, Bigfooting is about having a good time, having fun, and so hopefully by continuing to do that and going out into the field and going out and spending time in the woods, best place to get your evidence, best place to see something, that eventually something is going to be, that specimen will come around. So,
like Kip said earlier, it's a needle in a haystack, and that the needle is constantly moving. There are a lot of groups out there that are looking for the answer, that are active in the field, and regardless of if the nature, whatever the nature of these creatures is, the search is ongoing. We have groups that's out in the field. The Leopard Crosby, very, very busy. The North American Wood Ape Conservancy. There's all kinds of folks up in Washington. Bigfoot Ops, and friends of ours. The Bluff Creek Project, and just individuals that go out looking and looking for, trying to solve the answer. I think Kip is right that though I probably won't be the person to bring in a type specimen because I'm not out there to harm them. The answer won't be this mystery won't be solved until that's what happens, and it may happen completely by accident. Somebody's driving down the road and hits one, and there's a body, or somebody happens upon one out in the woods that died by accident, or a hunter shoots one. We don't know, but it's the whole. For me, I enjoy it because of the mystery and going out and looking for evidence and then analyzing that evidence as best we can. I think
that's a great point.
Before, right. I mean, we're building a body of evidence, so. Go ahead,
it's kind of like fishing. Well, I was just going to say, it's like fishing. If fishing's your hobby, and if you only have fun, if you're fishing, you're catching fish, then you probably ought to find another hobby. Bigfooting to me is the same way.
Right.
If I'm spending time with people that I enjoy being around, out in the woods, enjoying myself, it's just all part of the mystery. If I'm only having fun, if I'm actually finding Bigfoot, well, then I probably ought to find another interest or another hobby. But I mean, let's face it. I mean, it's the absolute mystery that keeps everybody going. It is just an amazing mystery. And then when you talk to people that have had actual experiences, I have people that I'm very close with that have had experiences. It just fuels the mystery even more. It's that little 7-8-year-old boy reading that John Green book and reading those accounts and then spending time in the woods and remembering those things. It's just it's a passion, it's an interest, it's a hobby, it's many things to many people. But for me, the most part is it's fun. And if I find something, then even better.
Very good. Wrap it up. We got a couple of minutes left. Let's. So the mystery isn't solved in 2015. We're continue to go out into the woods and where a lot of people don't go and spend a lot of time doing things that a lot of people don't do, and in hope to find what some people would consider a nightmare or monster, but most of us that are in bigfooting are fascinated by the possibility of an unknown species that has eluded us till even nearly all the way through 2015. Maybe 2016 will be the year of discovery that we have finally prove once and for all that Bigfoot, Sasquatch forest people, whatever you want to call them, would exist and bring it to the consciousness of the general public. I'd like to thank all our guests today, Kip Morrill, Trent Nielsen, and Julie Wrench for joining us here today. It was a lot of fun for me. I hope you guys had fun as well. Next week, we will be back on Sunday at 4 p.m. Pacific time. I'll be back here with my good friend and co-host Shane Corson. And until then, I hope that everybody has a great and safe New Year. And maybe 2016 again will be the year of discovery for the creature that we know as Bigfoot. Thanks, everybody. We will see you here again next week. Good night.
Thanks, Gunnar, and a shout out to Shane.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thanks, everybody.
Good night.
You bet.